If you've been looking into PC parts in 2026, you've probably had the same thought as I have. This is the worst time to build a PC because we're living through the dreaded RAMpocalypse. Prices are up across the board, in RAM especially, and a lot of people are saying just wait it out. But here's the problem. Nobody knows if prices are going to drop or when. So if you want a gaming PC right now, and if you have $800 to spend, this video is for you. I'm going to show you the best build that I would do in 2026 and exactly why I chose each part. So look, the first question that I had was, is this actually one of those rare moments when getting a pre-build makes more sense than building your own custom PC? And honestly, no. At $800, a lot of pre-builds are either using integrated graphics, or they're just stuffing in old budget GPUs that you're going to regret later. And even the used market isn't automatically better. Like, here's a real used build that's for sale that I'm going to use for reference. And look, some parts are totally fine. The CPU is good, but you start losing value pretty quickly in other areas. No NVMe storage, a cheap power supply, and the GPU is a used 3060. I mean, look, that's not a terrible deal, but it's not great value either. So even in 2026, the best move is to build it yourself. You just have to be smart about where your money goes. All right, GPU. So this is the part that decides whether or not a build is great or a total waste of money. And I want to set expectations here. At $800, we're still firmly within budget territory. So this is a 1080p gaming PC build, and I'd really only bump up to 1440p if you're okay with less stable frame rates and tweaking with settings and heavily relying on upscaling. The good news is we actually have a couple of really solid GPU options right now. So on the NVIDIA side, there's the RTX 5050, which is going for around $250. And look, it's only got 8 gigabytes of VRAM, but it's still a pretty strong 1080p gaming card. And the biggest reason to go with Team Green at this point is simple. It's DLSS. It really does make a huge difference in newer games because their upscaling technology is just one of the best on the market. On the other side, Intel actually has a really interesting option, which is the Arc B580. And that actually comes with 12 gigabytes of VRAM to the 5050's 8 gigabytes. So you do get more memory headroom, which is really nice. But Intel's upscaling technology just doesn't compete with NVIDIA's. So here's the trade-off. Intel gives you more VRAM and really solid raw performance, but NVIDIA is going to give you a more advanced upscaling technology in DLSS. And look, in benchmarks, these two cards are really close, so I don't think you're making a bad decision either way. So here's my take. If you're playing at 1080p, I would go with the 5050, but if you're trying to push 1440p more often, then I think that Intel's card makes more sense. But the story doesn't end there because there's the used market for GPUs. If you find like a used 3060 Ti, that's actually still going to be competitive with these other two cards, but just keep in mind that buying used is always a bit of a gamble. But here's the real steal. If you find a used 3070 for somewhere in the ballpark of $250, if it comes from a seller that you trust, I would actually snag it. That's actually going to be a legitimate performance jump over any of the other cards that we've talked about so far. But for this build, since I can't really find 3070s for that price very consistently, I'm just going to lock in the 5050 and then we'll build around it. And just so you know where this build is headed, here's a rough estimate of how much we're going to spend on each part before we get to our $800 target. Okay, for the CPU, there's actually a really obvious pick here, and that's the Ryzen 5 5500. It's going for under $100, and you get 6 CPU cores, so you can handle anything basic productivity-wise, and of course, it's going to give you really solid gaming performance. Like, generally speaking, especially in this price range, I'm going to prefer Ryzen over Intel at this point. They've just proven to have a better track record with gaming performance. But even beyond brand loyalty, I've looked around for alternatives, and realistically, there's just nothing that's going to compare to the 5500 at this price range. So Ryzen it is. Okay, for the motherboard, I'm going to do something a little bit weird. I'm picking a micro ATX board, even though, as you'll see later, we're going to use a mid-tower case. But hear me out, this is a value decision. You get 2 M.2 slots, one of which has PCIe 4 support, which we will be using. It has Wi-Fi 6 built in, it has 1 gigabit Ethernet, and it even has an ARGB header in case you wanted to add lighting at a later point. So look, for the price, those features are pretty hard to beat, so I'm totally fine with the board looking a little bit small inside of our case. Now, RAM, and of course this is the painful part. The reality is, across the board, RAM prices are just absolutely unhinged right now. I really did try to make DDR5 work in an $800 budget, but it's just impossible with this current market. So I went with the 5500 for the CPU, and we're gonna pair it with DDR4 RAM. So here I'm gonna target 16 gigabytes, and I want a 2x8 gigabyte kit. I don't want a single stick, just because that's gonna give you less performance. So I'm going with the Silicon Power 16 gigabyte kit. It's 3200 megahertz, it's CL16 timings, and yeah, right now it's going for about $120, which is pretty painful. If you're watching this video in the future and RAM prices have calmed down a bit, this is the first place where I would save money on the build and then use those extra dollars towards a nicer GPU. Okay, so for our power supply, our estimated wattage on PC Part Picker is only about 300 watts, but never buy a PSU just based off of the bare minimum estimate. You're gonna want a decent amount of headroom for safety and any wattage spikes, and then just overall for the long-term health of the system. So I have to get something that's 80 plus gold certified for their efficiency rating, and we're gonna have quite a bit of extra wattage just so that this thing never gets stressed out. So I picked the Apavia Galaxy 650 watt power supply. It's got a whole lot of headroom, it's gold rated for its efficiency, and at around $55 it fits well within our budget without being sketchy. Storage is actually kind of nice right now because you're not gonna save that much going with a SATA SSD versus an NVMe option. So we're gonna use NVMe for the extra speeds. So I'm using this Silicon Power drive. It has a terabyte worth of storage and is PCIe 4 so that we're taking full advantage of our motherboard. And look, if I'm honest, I don't really recommend going below a terabyte of storage in 2026. Games are just getting absolutely massive, so something like a 500 gigabyte drive is just gonna disappear really fast. And look, this drive is $120, which gets annoying, but you're gonna thank yourself later. Now look, if you know you only play lighter games and you for sure don't need a terabyte, then I would save money, get a 500 gigabyte drive, and then put the extra money towards the GPU. The nice part about that is, even if you're wrong with that gamble, storage is one of the easiest things to upgrade, especially since we have an extra NVMe slot on our motherboard. All right, and finally the case, and we have to level set here on aesthetics. I know we've all seen really flashy RGB builds all across the internet, and look, I'm not anti-RGB, I think that they're fantastic, but at $800, performance is just gonna matter a lot more than vibes. Every dollar that you spend on an extra cooler or nice fans or fancy lighting is gonna be a dollar that you're not spending on real in-game performance. So I went as simple as possible, the Fantex XT Pro. It's a basic mid tower, and yes, that does mean that our micro ATX board is gonna look a little small inside of this case. But look, everything's gonna fit, and for $50, you get 4 pre-installed fans, and you get a USB-A and a USB-C header on the top of the case. It's not trying to be super flashy, it's just functional and good value, and that's exactly what we need out of a case in this budget. So when it's all said and done, this genuinely does come out to be a really solid 1080p gaming PC. It's gonna be better value than any used build or a pre-build that you find, and altogether the total price is going to come out to $800.79 before tax. So look, don't get discouraged by the current market. You can still build a really respectable gaming PC in 2026 without spending a fortune. If what you're looking for is strong performance at 1080p, this build can last you for years. But if you really want that killer setup that'll crush games at 1440p, I'm putting out a $1,500 build video soon, and that one's gonna have way less compromises than this build at almost double the budget. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.